everyone. I'm Elena Harrop Dodd. I'm so happy to welcome you to the library, to Streetfeet's back in Putney, and I want to start by thanking the library and also the library board for hosting us. Very generous, and we appreciate it. We have a big program, so I will just start by saying that we want to introduce new members to those of you who know us, well, not yet met, and they are Fatmata Jah and Andrea Humphrey. They will be reading, and we hope we'll have time to talk with you at the end of the reading so we can have some conversation. So here is our program. What does it mean to be human?
Just a couple of days ago, I read a lovely essay online. Are you hearing me, everybody?
No.
Okay. Just a couple of days ago, I read a lovely essay online about the 18th century African-American poet Phyllis Wheatley, and she refuted prejudice and established her humanity in a very interesting way by taking the high ground and establishing herself as a spiritual being. And speaking of spiritual beings, I will present a poem, and it is called France Eagle, and that is France, the country of France, Eagle the bird. And in this poem, I am talking about going to Franz Siegel Park in the Bronx as a child, spelled Franzsiegel, Franz Siegel. In days of a child's unlimited sunlight, we walked to Franz Siegel Park, climbing the hills under the maples. Spring, we stick green wings on our noses. On our left, a broad valley of playing fields. Above us, the grandfather sycamore standing guard at the steps down to Girard Avenue. Under an oak, a bench where we feed pigeons and squirrels peanuts. My small fingers learn cleverness, opening the rough, papery shells, finding the seams. Over there, a little cliff faces the Bronx County Courthouse. I romp with my sister through the ginkgo grove, ride crabapple branches. 5 years old, I recall the sting of my father's slap on my bottom to wake the dreamy, eager child skipping out into the grand concourse. Past Cardinal Hayes High School, over the old railroad bridge. I look up in the middle of a tenement block and ask, "Daddy, is there a God?" My father, atheist, high school mathematics teacher, answers with brief, casual precision, "Some people think there's a God." This gift, small as crabapple seed, maple tree wing, dry promise of peanut, the invitation to join the grown-ups in their riddling heaven. Thank you. And next is Fatmata Jah.
Reading a short excerpt from my story, Samba. Can you hear me?
No.
Pick it up, yeah.
Pick out the mic.
Oh, okay.
Take it out.
Let me take it out.
There you
Use this.
go. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. It was a cloudy July morning, unusually dull and chilly. I was very tired, having driven 18 hours with my uncle to come and get my family to the city where it was safe. My uncle never wanted me to come since I was only 12 years old, but I insisted that the only way my parents would leave was if they saw me. As we were getting ready to leave, my little brother came running in the backyard where I was putting some foodstuff in the back of the truck. Gasping for breath, he cried, "They're here, they're here. They're almost in our village. Tijan just came. He said they're in the next village. Let's get out of here now," he cried, pulling me towards the truck. "Dad is still at the mosque, so we have to wait for him," I said. Then we heard gunshots. I called for my middle brother, who was only 9. I knew it was too late to get on the truck. I realized I had to hide them somewhere until the rebels leave town, because most times they only raid people's houses for food and items of value they can sell across the border. I took them out to the backyard and hid them in an empty water tank, covered them up with branches from the trees. No matter what you hear outside, do not come out or move around, or else the rebel will shoot. Do you understand? I said. They both mumbled, afraid to say something already. That was a moment I will never forget. Looking into those eyes which were supposed to be innocent, but already knew what death is. Eyes that were asking, "Are you sure we are safe here? We are not going to be killed? What if you die? What are we to do?" As I was going back into the house, I heard a loud bang on the front door, so I ran back to where Demba and Salif were, whispering to them that I was climbing the tree that is right where they were, and that I'll be watching out for them. My mother came running, looking for us, afraid to call our names. One of the rebels came after her, thinking she was trying to escape. He pulled her by the neck and her buba and dragged her back inside. "Where are they? Have you been hiding them?" With a dilemma as to whether I will stay, I almost fell and some of the branches dropped. Another giant came out roaring. I could tell he was their leader as they were quiet and motionless. He asked the same question. "Where are the soldiers? We know you're supporting soldiers. That truck belonged to a soldier." "The truck belongs to my husband, brother, who came to get us. We were about to leave because my husband is sick. There is no doctor here," cried my mother. "Tell me the truth or I'll kill you," he screamed, shaking her so hard that I thought she was going to faint. "Captain, Captain," cried one of them, "I found something," which happens to be an old trouser of my uncle. "See, this is an army uniform. They are not telling the truth." At this moment, my father walked in, still dressed in his long kaftan, with his tasbih in his hands. As he was thinking of what to say, the leader grabbed him. "Where are the soldiers, you stupid Madingo man?" kicking him in the knee. Meanwhile, the others were busy ransacking the house, looking for whatever they can carry. Just then, there were noises coming outside. Fearing it was soldiers, they shot my dad, and as my mom ran to hold him, they shot her also. "This should teach Mandigos not to interfere in politics. This is our country," another one was boasting, and with his AK-47, fired some more rounds at my parents. Filled with shock and horror, I almost fell, and one of them who was guarding the back door heard the sound and opened fire again. At this moment, a cat dropped down and ran in front of them. They all laughed and teased him of shooting at a cat. Being a little amused, they left and came back, taking my uncle's truck with them. I climbed down the tree after making sure they were all gone and ran straight to my parents, who were almost drowning in their blood. My mother was bleeding so bad I took her headscarf and tied it around her leg. That's when she realized it was me. She opened her eyes with tears running down her cheeks. "Your brothers?" she asked faintly. I pointed towards the tank. "Your uncle?" she asked again, with a puzzled and worried look on her face. I pointed towards the gate as my uncle was just walking in. Seeing him, she made a deep sigh of relief, knowing her children would be taken care of. She closed her eyes and started coughing. My uncle, who was still in shock and didn't know what to do, came over holding her head up so she can rest on his lap. She closed her eyes for a few minutes and then opened it again. This time she could not talk. She pointed towards the tank. I hesitated for a minute as I did not want my brothers to see them in this way. But knowing she was dying, I had to grant her her wish. I went over and got my brothers, who were drenched in tears. I told them, especially Demba, who was only 6.5, that Mom was very weak and they should not cry or ask questions. As they came over sobbing and shaking, was so confused, not knowing what to do. At this moment, my dad moved a finger as my uncle tried to pull him up. He could not even talk because he started spitting blood as he was shot almost everywhere in his body. Yet he still managed to touch Demba and Sally. Then his hands dropped, not moving or coughing. My uncle picked him up and cleaned him up a little bit. At this moment, my mother also died, with her hands still wrapped around us. We buried them in the garden behind our house. Thank you.
All right, this is a poem named I Am What I Am Not. A line of blood is drawn over my crooked smile. Or is it just a cheap lipstick in the reflection of a Starbucks window? In the eyes of a young girl, no longer. There's always too many strangers inside my head, or in the peripheral vision as I power walk with the rain. Not cower by the sound of footsteps behind me, always aware of my female as target, as I listening in the empty sidewalk, darkened, not fit for girl alone. Hate is not in my throat, but in those fucked up intruders' creepy breath. My inner GPS alerted me. I'm drawn to purple darkness, free to glide with moon. Stars of death and mystery pull me galactically. North Star navigates me to be here, where my sleepless soul belongs. Fear just can't swallow my big ass, big heads, endless hunger for after hours, where dreams rule the queen of heart. I am that kind of city walker, full of fear and curiosity. A million pores all awakened to the beat of barbaric asphalt. Tightrope walker across the wire of poetry defying gravity. Logic of gyrating morbid Tao. I need to break the mode, get deeper into mud. Male bashing? Not an argument, but a fact. Every 3 minutes, some broad gets raped, gets raped, gets raped. I'm a walking time bomb, a cat with dilated eyes and Arjo strides. Blame it on the artist, the poetess, the hungry she-wolf, the snake with a huge red apple. Blame it on the paradise, tree of knowledge, hell. Blame it on my flowering libido, my lust-craving heart, who hears night's contrapuntal snares of drumming, rites of stars gone out of alignment. Venus kissing Jupiter tonight. Blame it on the star-crossed lovers. My older self needs a dose of night walk. Date life sometimes gets boring. Courting danger makes better art, gives reason to break the line. Why try to make sense out of all this living when everything stares down at you? Or stare down as you get older and your heart only gets younger. Something tells me I will live forever if I keep my child self alive. And my child cries out to me, I'm not going to bed. I'm not tired of searching for that story that has no ending. Thank you.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah.
This is from the very center of a novel in progress, so it's the central kernel of the plot. It's called An Actual Birth Story. That's the name of the chapter. The Ithaca Journal, August 19th, 1952. At 10:30 a.m. Sunday morning, patrolling officers spotted the woman wandering along the 200 block of State Street. She was approached by an officer who knew her, and she asked him for 75 cents for a pack of cigarettes, said Detective Gerald Tucker. Most of the guys working the street have working knowledge of people in the area, Tucker continued. They more or less kept an eye on her. Officer Roderick Howe recognized her immediately and knew something wasn't right. Detective Tucker says he's surprised by phone calls from all over the country and was just doing his job. I'm just like everybody else, he said. It doesn't make sense. Ribby saw Officer Howe before he saw her and started across State Street to talk to him. He was just coming out of the home dairy and had a streak of powdered sugar across his uniform shirt. "Aw, Rod, honey," Ribby drawled. "You lose bad to that lemon fill, did ya?" Howe looked sheepish, wiping at his shirt but spreading more sugar on it from his still dusty hands. Ribby stepped up close to help him out, slowly rubbing his shirt like she'd seen Tierney do with Jean Milland in Close to My Heart. Howe was kind of cute after all, even if he was younger, and she wasn't sure she'd see Icky Mosca ever again. "There," she said, her attentiveness satisfied. "Listen, Rod, I need smokes. You got 75 cents you could loan me until, well, you know." "Miss Rye," Howe said in his ticket-writing voice, "you know a lady in your condition should not imbibe tobacco products." "Oh, Rod, come on now. That's just an old wives' tale, and you know I'm not an old wife." She stepped closer to him, imagining they were deeper in the alley and being filmed by Houston or Manelli. Howe stepped back, flat against the home dairy's brick side pillar, and said, "Now, Paraboea, you know I can't be aiding and abetting the bad habits of a nice—" "Well, fuck it, Officer Howe," Ribby sneered, making sizzling jazz hands in his face and turning to march down toward the movie theater. The Observer-Dispatch, Friday, August 21, 1952. Some physicians across the country have expressed doubts that the operation could be done without assistance. But Dr. Frederick E. James said that from a medical standpoint, I have no reason to doubt that Paraboea Rye, 29, had performed the operation. Police say she used a cheap imitation pearl-handled jackknife to make an incision several inches long. Officer Howe was so surprised by Ribby's unusual outbursts that he stayed frozen against the brick pillar, gazing at the brilliant tiki-fruited straw bag bouncing off her right hip as she marched away. The colors flashed in the sun as if they were wet, especially the purple banana hooked over the edge of the bag, and that bright red streak down the inside left leg of her white slacks. That was quite the come-on, that was. "Ribby," he called, "come on, let's talk about it." But she kept stalking off, and with each step that red streak lengthened. Then the purple banana unfurled tiny fingers. Hal shook his head, wondering what was in that powdered sugar. "Paraboea, stop!" he shouted, as his brain finally began to engage his eyes. Ribby swung around, fist on her hips in frustration. "What?" she shouted back. Hal's eyes bugged like the bunny's as he tried for one more instant to merge with the brick wall holding him up. "What do you want?" Ribby shouted again. "Ribby," he whispered. "Stop there, hun. You're bleeding, I think." Rai Paraboea, admission summary. This 29-year-old single nulliparous woman was brought to the hospital by ambulance after being found wandering the Ithaca State Street with a newborn baby tucked into her purse, and it appeared to be in very poor condition. As Ribby waited for Officer Howe to approach her, she realized she no longer wanted to smoke. "Ribby, hun, that's a new bag, right?" Howe said quietly as he edged closer. Ribby looked down and smiled at the bright colors. "Looks like you have something important in there. Can I see?" Howe whispered to her as he reached for the edge of the bag. "Nah, Rod, it's still my secret for a little while longer, okay?" Howe backed off, nodded, and looked around for anyone to send to a telephone. A waitress peering out of the home dairy front window ran outside to the phone booth at the corner saying, "I'll call Bangs." Howe turned back to Ribby, who was starting to slouch against him. A chair appeared, and Ribby fell onto it in slow motion. Howe caught at the bag, but Ribby just clutched it closer. "So what'd you name it, Ribby?" "She's a girl, Rod." "I don't know. I haven't thought of a name yet. What do you think would be good?" "Nothing Greek or Italian, though. Me and Icky, between us, we sure haven't done her much good." "Well," Howe said, kneeling next to Ribby with both his hands cradling the bottom of the tote bag, "if I ever have a daughter, I want to call her Anna, after my mom." A screaming Bangs ambulance suddenly whirled around the corner of State and Cayuga. "Anna," Ribby sighed. "That's nice, Rod. Nice."
Ancestors and elevators. The hospital corridors were long, shiny, and impersonal as I passed through them each afternoon during my husband's week of recovery from surgery for knee replacement. He soon came home. He walked freely, climbed stairs, and was back in our Boston apartment. I'm not even sure I remember which knee is the one with the scar. Nonetheless, I experience a certain melancholy when I recall the hospital's faceless corridors and quietly metallic elevators, empty of traffic at the end of the workday. The walls displayed billboard-like posters, reminding the viewer how caring and humane smiling patients were quoted was this place. Signs named benefactors who became my companions on trips to and fro. Most prominent were Florence and Mortimer Grismish. I was fascinated by the consonants. Following sign after sign on the way to their building, I invented a story of penniless immigrants who built a fortune, donating millions to raise this tower. Was theirs ill-gotten wealth? I finally consulted the internet, where I found the report of a gift from this family some 50 years ago of $500,000. I felt vaguely disappointed. These donors weren't multimillionaires. They weren't even immigrants. They were native Bostonians. So much for my story. Still, it had brought a human face to the tall letters on the wall. Even elevator cars bore plaques above the doors. A visiting relative might recognize the name of an austere uncle, a stylish great-aunt, and feel a sense of belonging. And so, why not? I began to insert my own family's names. How about the Moses and Yetta Harrop Cancer Center for the grandparents I knew only from a sepia photo, whose legacy of children included my father and some of my favorite uncles and aunts. For my mother's side, I would endow the Nora and William Chater Interfaith Chapel. English and Episcopalian, these grandparents numbered priests among their descendants. As for the elevators, I could transform letters on plaques, and as I rode up to my husband's ward, I would be in the company of my cousins, Edith and Eugene Frankel. And on the way down, I would dedicate the compartment to my own parents, Joan Chater and Henry Harrop. You might try it next time you walk through a high-ceilinged hospital entrance hall, feeling adrift and anonymous. Suppose healing is connected with identity. Suppose that as a house of healing, the hospital must somehow represent all of us. Donors, financiers, architects, builders, laborers, medical, administrative, and maintenance workers, students and researchers, patients, their partners, parents, grandparents, children, siblings, friends, and extended families. An inspired painting or tapestry in the lobby might affirm the worlds within worlds of all who come and go. We want to be able to say, I know this place and it knows me. This is the healthy reciprocity that should be available to everybody if we find it, and in public spaces in general, libraries. If we find it, we are nurtured. If not, we have to create it for ourselves. Remember, we're around, say the ancestors, in case you need us in the elevators.
Just a couple more poems. The first is called Travelers. Gaunt man with a paper cup, his edges drawn with a hard, dark chalk, anxious glance through the crowd corridors in the subway car. Brother, do you own 4 walls to clothe yourself in? A bed to practice death in, a sheet to tunnel your feet in their dream walk? I hunch my carry-on bag closer. Soon I lift into a metal sleep, into a toy world where each tree is a tiny tuft of moss, and cars are winks of light on thready roads. The deep dig of human machines itches ugly on the red Georgia crust. Life struggles unseen in its skin of dust. And here I return to my childhood. Supple ice. It was only a block to kindergarten. In a few steps, my socks let go of the knees and slumped at my ankles. No skirt protects you. In January, I went numb to the hips. A few years later, some joker invented tights. The elastic scoffed at my child's waist. The crotch marched down the thighs, a sticky web welcoming the clinging cold. Still here, old now, still groping at the steel cables of the wind that flit from my frozen fingertips to whiplash to the bone. Hot guts keep me from fading into snow. I can't see into my own mystery, but I feel stubborn limbs pulling towards their little destinies, rims rolling over the slippery speed bump of joints. It takes me an hour, heat pipes chugging, grumbling against the chill, each tiny hammock that clothes vertebrae must be mended. Each ache in stitching must be wakened. It's an asking each morning, am I ready to test my suppleness against such force? I gather my threads. The older I am, the more naked. Thank you. Oh, and now, one moment, please. I must introduce a little play for you, Twilight Time. Our closing piece is Twilight Time, a play by Mary McCullough, read by Mary McCullough and Elena Harrop. The characters are Nora Pinkney, an African-American woman in her late 20s, and Mrs. Celeste, a white woman in her 50s, the employer of Nora's mom, Eunice Pinkney. The setting is the kitchen of the Pinkney home in the late 1960s in a small southern town in the United States. The time is late afternoon. Nora Pinkney is grieving her mother's recent death. She is looking through photos, recipes, and other mementos as Mrs. Celeste approaches the door.
Yoo-hoo! I just came by to pay my respects to your mother.
You want to come in, I guess.
May I?
I guess.
I brought you a little something, just some biscuits and homemade jam. Maybe you could use it with all the family you have coming for the funeral.
Thank you. I have a lot to get done before the rest of the family comes.
Could I help you? I will miss her. I depended on her for so much. And we had so many special times together. We laughed at life together.
I'm sure you did. Would you like a cup of coffee? Would you like to take a seat? Would you like this photograph of my mother? How would you like to leave my mother alone?
What's gotten into you, girl? I'm only here because I feel your mother would have wanted me to come and be of some comfort to you. I have lost a friend, not just a maid. We had so much fun at all those bridge club luncheons, and Eunice made those tiny little sandwiches without the crust. I always wondered what she did with the crust she took off. And her biscuits. Nora, by the way, did Eunice write her recipes down anywhere?
Sit down, Mrs. C. Let's take a look. See what I can find. Oh, here's a recipe for brown biscuits. But I expect you want the one for white biscuits. It's here somewhere. Oh, here it is. White biscuits. 2 cups of white flour, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, a little water, and 1 to 2 tablespoons of spit. Oh, depending on how many insults you've had today.
What did you say? Did you say spit?
Oh, I must have misread it. Do you want to know how she made those Bridge Club sandwiches? Here's her recipe. Bridge Club sandwiches. Take the brown crust off the white bread, cut the white bread into triangles, and put aside while you make the sandwich spread. Sift 1 cup of red dirt to get all the rocks out. Cook until all the water evaporates. Add seasoning of your choice, according to how much you hate the Bridge Club women.
You're messing with me today of all days. Your mother's cooking was great. You can't take that away by making up these silly pretend recipes.
Are you so sure I made them up? Did any of those cannabis you ate taste a little too exotic?
Stop it. Eunice would slap your face if she could see how you are carrying on. She understood respect, which is more than I can say for you.
Ah, respect. I knew that would come up eventually. I bet we can find a recipe for that in here somewhere. But respect, is that something you eat? I don't think so. It was more like part of the show Eunice had to put on for you, and you swallowed it. Good old respect. I don't have any left for you or for anyone who looks like you.
You're making this very difficult for me. I've come over to share with you my memories of my dear departed maid and friend, and I find you behaving as if you belong in the state mental institution. You're acting like some of those crazy, angry black women I see on TV. Well, I just turn them right off. Eunice was never like that. Why are you being so hateful to me?
Eunice wasn't my mother. This is my grief. Mine. Do you understand? This is my time. With my memories of her, and you have no place in them. None.
I didn't mean to intrude. I thought I could give you something back by sharing my memories of her with you. Eunice talked a lot about you. She was real proud of you going to college, doing so well. Of course, we talked a lot about you going north. Now, Eunice was very brave to let you go so far, especially when she needed you close to home when she got sick that time. Selfish, selfish, selfish. Going to college when your mother needed you.
Don't try to make me feel guilty. You were just envious that I was getting out of your control. You wanted me to be your maid's helper. Well, I refused to join your maid training school. Mama knew what had to be done. She knew I had to choose to become her daughter, not your waiting in the wings maid. But you don't know what I'm talking about, do you? I'm not the good Southern black girl you worked hard for me to be. Mama was successful in her life. Hallelujah.
You think you can get off that easy? You let your family down. Tell me, Missy, where were you when Eunice, your mama, needed you?
Marching so I would never have to be no modern-day slave to some goddamn white woman with less smarts than me. That's where I was. And you? In your big house, safe from it all, living your privileged life. And every once in a while, you took some time out to play Lady Bountiful. Did you come over here in your uniform with your white apron and maid's hat? Did you make her chicken soup and clean the drool off of her chin? Did you wipe her ass when she couldn't do it for herself after her last stroke?
I took care of Eunice. I offered to pick her up so she wouldn't have to take the bus, and I always drove her home when it was raining. I'd stop whatever I was doing and take her home no matter what. She was my friend.
She was not your friend. You paid her. I'm trying not to laugh at you. You were the white woman and she was the colored maid. No more, no less.
No, it was more than that. We shared things.
The reality is that she listened and you shared. Think about it. She knew a lot about you. I mean, what did you really know about her? What can you tell me about your maid's feelings about anything? What made her laugh? What made her cry? What was her favorite color or her favorite food for that matter? Even I knew your favorite food and your favorite color and what made you cry. Oh yes, your husband's affair with your bridge friend Maurice. Oh, cut it out. I know about that habit too. I never believed it when Mama would tell us you had one of your famous attacks.
How did you know about Clarice?
Don't you know that everything that happened in your house was our evening's entertainment? She told us so we would learn not to be like you. She told us so we would grow up smart.
And are you smart, Nora? Or are you just a nasty little black bitch that gets off on hurting people?
Hurting people? Oh, have I hurt you? Oh, good. Because that's exactly what I wanted to do. Success at last. No need to pretend politeness or respect or that I am the least bit interested in how kind you were to your black maid. The truth, finally.
The truth, Nora. The truth is that you are angry not at me, but at yourself. Eunice loved you. She thought that somehow you blamed her for her nervous breakdown when you were little. She was sick, not crazy. She never meant to hurt you. I feel sorry for you.
You came to my house and you took my mother away. She was my beautiful fairy godmother. But when she went to work for you, she became the tired old witch. I didn't know her anymore.
I'm sorry, Nora.
You shared something that I didn't understand. You might have even been friends. My mother died a long time ago. You knew someone I didn't.
I'll see you at the church tomorrow. I'll be there to say goodbye to a good friend.
Some glad morning when this life is over, fly away. Thank you. During this section of the program, we like to turn to the audience and see if they have any questions or any comments on what you have heard this evening. The theme of the program is, what does it mean to be human? It's a question we're continuously trying to answer, so don't ask us to answer that question. We're still in a process of defining what it is. We think of humanity, but also we think and write about the humane way in which humans behave in the world. So, anyone? Any questions? Anything? We'll do our best. Yes?
I would like to know how you found each other.
How we found each other. That is a story that I will ask Eleanor to answer tonight. We all take turns answering that question.
Well, I'll start. That I heard there was going to be an international women's conference in, let's see, there had been one in 75, and this was going to be 85 in Africa. And I just saw in my mind this group of women going to the conference that looked like the variety of American women that I saw. I was living in Boston, on the street, and I got an idea that somehow I would go with a group. And I think I first talked to Mary because we'd been in a theater group in the 60s, which was what we called integrated. We had African American and Euro-American and a variety of other backgrounds in that group. And we began to build a group to go to Nairobi, where this conference was going to be. And it just grew. We began to see we were part of a bigger movement, and we had things to say. And over time, we searched out. I knew Lee Min because we ran into each other at a women's theater conference, but turned out she'd been to Putney when she was 17 or something, long before I had met Ted or lived here or anything. Let's see, we've had different members over time, and I met Mary Birnbaum in the neighborhood where we were living. She was writing poems every day, but she hadn't shown them to people very much. Fatmata is a student, has been a student in a summer program we've been to at UMass Boston, where she also works. Andrea has been a neighbor in Somerville, Mass. Of Mary. Did I get everybody?
We've known each other a few years. We did a big show together. She was the costume designer and a wonderful person to work with. And when she relocated, came to Somerville, we reconnected, and I knew she was an excellent writer. She joined the group.
And Christina Liu, who is not here today, she's recovering from oral surgery, was also a student at the Joyner Institute at UMass at the program that many of us like to attend in late June. So I think that covers all the members
It's a start.
right now.
Something about meeting in each other's kitchens, knowing each other through raising children, history.
Now, we've been together a number of years, more than a number of years. Any other questions? Yes.
How do you work together? Do you critique each other's work? You must encourage each other, but how does that happen?
Yes. Mary, why don't you answer that question? Mary.
Could you repeat the question, too?
Oh, the question is, how do we work together? Do we critique each other? What is that process like?
Okay, that process is known as workshopping. So when we gather at a meeting, it's one of the most important things that we do because that's why we gather together. And each person is allotted a period of time to read some work, whether it's new or old work that's being revisited and worked on. And after that person reads the work, each of our members, we go around in a circle in several times, and we talk about what we see in that work. We talk about what the writer is trying to do in the work, whether we understand it or not, and something wonderful that we see in it, maybe something later on that we think needs a little bit more work, a little more clarification, a little more emphasis. So there are rounds. There are rounds of discussion, and we begin with the positive before we get critical. So we always want to support.
Okay. Yes.
The last piece was very poignant in exploring a relationship that could never be a real equal relationship, and especially to those of us who had black maids who we loved. Just wonder what it looks like on the other side. And I've been in Africa recently, and in South Africa particularly, and rereading Doris Lessing's early short stories, which just go into that same relationship over and over again, looking at it from all different sides. And I really appreciated your sight.
Thank you. It's complex, isn't it?
It's
It's a very
complex.
complex kind of relationship. So, thank you.
Maybe people could stand when they ask questions.
Yes.
And repeat the
Did you
questions.
No,
did you
I
hear what she was talking about, the relationship maid to employer, black maid, and the complexities of that relationship, and having recently been in South Africa and reading Doris Lessing's short stories, where she explores that kind of relationship over and over again. Questions? Any comments on the other pieces of writing? Any questions? Do you have any for the other writers here? Yes.
I couldn't separate them out. I just am in such a state of awe from all of you. I think it was extraordinary. Brilliant writing, wonderfully presented, and everything, it worked together in a very wonderful way. I think it's
Just made our day.
Thank you. Did you get that, please?
Maybe not everybody thinks it.
But that's all right. Put it on the film. Yes? Could you stand so other people can see you?
It was a samba, the excerpt.
Samba.
Where did that take place?
On the top. Use the microphone. Speak loudly.
That took place in Liberia, West Africa. That was during the Civil War in Liberia.
Was that autobiographical?
Not really, but it happened to someone that I know. Yeah, because I was in Liberia also during the war. I left just when it started. I was fortunate to leave a little early, so I didn't get caught up. But I knew a lot of friends and family members that had a lot of terrible experiences. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Want to ask?
What does it mean to be human?
I always like this moment when we can ask you what you're working on, because most people I know, and especially who come to this, have creative work they're doing in process, and we get to hear, and perhaps it's related to, I see Inez, she's working on a piece about refugees. I wonder if it feeds into your thoughts.
Yeah, it did.
Could you stand up, please, so
Yes.
speak loudly?
Okay.
Everyone's ears.
Oh, dear. So Elena just mentioned that we are working on a piece about refugees, which is daunting. And although you said it was during the Civil War, which is a while ago, I think nothing has changed. Maybe things have become even worse. So I'm just pondering about the themes of almost everybody, what it means to be human, and it seems to be awfully hard. And I think I'm pondering about how we can transcend the harshness and the brutality of being human, and where do we find reprieve or relief, as something higher than ourselves. So I'm looking for that. I heard a lot of things that bring me to the actual harsh things, but I'm looking for that moment. Where can I rise above that? What is that moment? So that's a question.
So,
I just wanted to share, I'm in another group, and I just heard a wonderful piece written by a retired nun that was so moving. And the moment that she shares has to do with nature, looking for that thing that takes you sort of out of yourself and beyond. She wrote about a great blue heron and her moment with it. And it was just a moment. When she read it, it was like maybe 3 pages. And everyone in the room was, I guess, not only inspired, but renewed in a way. So I just wanted to share
Thank you.
that.
That was
maybe, Linda, you make books. What would you say about what you're doing now, and how it's about being human?
Well, it is, I'm actually working on somebody else's book right now, and so it is about her being human. She wants to pass along her work to her children in a beautiful form, and just, so I put down my work, and I'm working on her work so that she can leave it to her children, and it's a writer's book, so it's very complex, but it's a wonderful thought that we could leave a beautiful object, sort of collect ourselves and leave a beautiful object behind instead of a bunch of old file folders that just get yellow and we throw out. And I've been throwing out mine. That's
So thinking about legacies.
legacy.
Making something of beauty to pass on.
It's also generational. That's one of the things that grabs me. I think that's, if I could put my finger on it, which I have trouble doing here, that you make a way for the generations to remember each other. And I think that is really a part of being human.
Yeah, and would add to that, thinking about saving, especially when there's been interruption and loss. And where, like Mary grew up in South, so did I, in worlds that weren't supposed to come together. So in a way, we also try to put together now, what were you doing in the 50s and what was I doing? And finding out how to make that picture come together. I think it's a hopeful thing, because who was it talked about curiosity? We're curious. It's natural. It's one of that very human thing, to be curious and ask questions, but respectfully.
Okay, we
should
want
wrap
to
up, yeah.
leave time for you to interact with each other, or if you would like personally to speak with one of the Streetfeet Women, there's time to do that. We do have to be out of the library by 8 o'clock.
We should, yeah, kind of pack up.
So we have a few minutes to